Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Madness Entertainment Group presents the Madness Comic Network with original programming and additional comic-related content.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 7th and 8th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline Comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday nights as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hello.
Wham!
Welcome to a Silverline Show on Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim TK, and I'm joined, as always, by Quentin Bedwell.
Yes, coming to you live from the Silverline Studios.
Yes.
Get ready for awesome. Engaged.
And we finally used the right intro, so that's a win.
Yes.
Yes. But we are a show that happens on Tuesdays, and today we're going to be talking about why comics belong in the classroom. So I'll be getting into that in a second here. But we didn't really get a chance to catch up before the show. I was running in from another room. So Quentin, how have you been doing?
I've been doing well. It's been really good. Been on trips and having all kinds of, family stuff going on. So,
Nice.
Yep. And not to mention the Kickstarter going on right now. Get on over there and pledge.
Yes. I think we already hit our initial goal, didn't we?
Yes, we did. We did fund, but now we are reaching for stretch goals, and that's what I'm going to be drawing tonight on stream is some of the stretch goals for y'all to have a sneak peek at.
Very
I think
cool.
we can show them.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to get your hands on some cool indie comics, and if you're watching live, you can go do it now. If you're watching the VOD, you still have some time to go head over to our Kickstarter and go ahead and fund it. Get yourself some dope comics and get us closer to some stretch goals. So you get some additional goodies, get more bang for your buck.
Yeah, it's already just packed with value. The whole Kickstarter is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and these stretch goals that we're doing, that just adds even more. I mean, there's 3 books this time around. So, I mean, that right there in itself, you're getting 3 books, 3 different sets of creators.
It's unheard of.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And unlike some other Kickstarter groups, we actually fulfill when we read our goals.
Yep.
Yeah. So far, we got perfect reviews. We have not missed a backer. So very proud of our record there. So today we are talking about why comics belong in the classroom. Roland messaged me. Talking about some Twitter stuff. All right, so we're talking about why comics belong in the classroom. So for those of you that think this subject sounds familiar, that's because there was a TED Talk about 4 years ago by a gentleman by the name of Gene Yang, who talked about his experience as a teacher bringing comics into his classroom. So we're not quite hitting on the same points. We're going to be talking about from a slightly different angle, but we will hit on a few of the same key points that make up the history of why comics in the classroom is perhaps was more controversial, not as much anymore, but still not as commonplace as we might like to see it. So starting out, I'll say it. I am younger than Quentin, so we went through schools at a different time. But in my personal experience, I didn't get. We had film as literature in high school, but still really no comics or graphic novels or anything like that. It wasn't until I got to college that we actually read through, graphic novels or comics as part of the core curriculum. And actually had like a decent collection of them in the library. So I don't know about your experience in school, but were comics even a consideration in school while you're going through it?
Not at all. Not at all. Yeah, and they were very frowned upon from like peers. Like if you were a known comic book person, then you were marked.
You were a nerd.
Even though, I know for a fact a lot of them, read comics
for
as
sure.
well, but you know how it goes, you're in school. And anyway, but yeah, no, as far as academically, there was a lot of potential there. And, aside from tiny little cartoons and stuff like that, little characters, that's about it. But it could have been so used. Because comics are great for learning and teaching, and people really retain stuff they see in a visual format. I don't get it, but not too much on the academic side.
Okay. Yeah. So talking about the overall history of comics in the classroom. Comics rose to popularity, throughout World War II, starting out right before then, and then as the war's going on, kids at home were able to, that's kind of like their escape from the dreariness of living through the 40s. And then 1945, 1946, they actually did see some comics get featured in the classroom because, it's a new form of literature and always something that, academics are always probably the most eager to jump on something new and exciting before it gets smacked out of their hands by some other researcher. And that's kind of exactly what happened. There was a child psychologist by the name of Dr. Frederick Wortham, who wrote a book called Seduction of the Innocent, which essentially posed the argument that comics were turning children and youths into delinquents. And it was so prevalent that it ended up turning into a whole thing. The Senate started having hearings on whether or not comics were good for moral character, and that took them out of the classroom at that point in the 50s. So it actually was it. So for a while, their comics weren't in the classroom just because there's a whole, political debacle with it. Always good for ruining our fun.
Yep.
Yeah. And then even after 70s and more so the 80s, comics start catching them back on with the youths and get a little more popularity. Now it gets to the point though where also you're in peak jock culture. Everyone's all into Muscle Beach and the rise of the bodybuilder that happened in the late 70s takes pop culture. So now comics aren't featured because if you're a comic reader or an arcade kid, then you're a nerd.
Yeah.
Little did they know that in 40 years or so, nerds and jocks would kind of become the same archetype because it's all about min-maxing. Everything is all about numbers.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, it's amazing the whole dynamic back then. I think it's a lot more widely accepted now, of course. But back then it was you could get tortured for letting your colors show. Absolutely. I mean, you get a lot of hate. Just from people like I say that were reading comics as well, but
Yeah.
they would never let anybody know that, of course.
Right. Yeah, because it would end up tarnishing their cool cred. Yep. But now, yeah, comics are much more widely popularized, thanks to just nerd culture exploding in all assets. Video games are the biggest grossing form of entertainment. And the MCU is the most successful film franchise to ever exist. And you can't go, into a shop without seeing Captain America or Spider-Man on a shirt or a tchotchke or whatever. They're everywhere.
Yeah, it's really I totally welcome this age for several reasons, but one of them being back, you talking about the muscle bound 80s era where everybody's in the gym and all this, craziness going on. Another thing too is like you could just look forward to a Dracula movie like every couple months. There's like a new Dracula movie, or I mean we went through whole stints of super action movies and anything other than action. It was like it seemed like there was Dracula movies every couple months. I mean it was crazy, them just doing and redoing Frankenstein and Dracula, and they a superhero movie just couldn't make it off the ground until finally, Batman, Tim Burton's Batman. So yeah, I definitely love this age for this, that you can't watch a movie without there being, or you can't go to go on your TV. And I was going to say, go to a movie store, but what are those?
Yeah.
But anyway, you can't go through your streaming services and not see some sort of superhero type thing or people with special abilities and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great for that. And now we are starting to see comics get introduced into the classroom in different ways. And Gene Yang's TED Talk, he talks about how he did that. Actually, what he ended up doing is while he was a teacher, he's also a professional cartoonist. So while he was teaching math classes, and if he had to be out, he would draw like a 4 or 5 page comic of the Country Superman was out before Tim Burton's Batman. Yes, I don't know which one had the bigger box office. I know they both did well.
Which one? What are you talking about?
Chris Reeves, Jeff Potts on the YouTube.
Oh yeah.
The Reeves Superman's out before the Burton Batman. I want to say Burton Batman did have a slightly better box office. I'll have to double check that. But
Well,
it would have been helped in noticeable part
I
too.
I will agree to that. Superman lit the fire, but their consequent failures after the first one, one after the other, they just got worse and worse, and people got fatigue.
Yeah.
And yeah, but whenever Batman came along, I mean, man, everybody had a Batman shirt on.
Yes.
Everybody had a Batman that old oval logo on their shirt, and it was the coolest thing to have that. And I mean, there was for the first time there was Batman video games and all that stuff. And I don't remember that as much with Superman. Now Superman, they did have some merchandising and stuff, but it was never on the level that Batman was. But yeah, you are correct. That Superman, I believe he kind of started it, in that direction. But man, Batman was the guy.
Yep.
He brought it home.
That Shaq's Steel was the.
There we go. We gotta have his mention in here.
Here we go. So what Jin Yang did, he would draw the math lesson as a comic, and then use that to essentially teach the class when he had a sub in.
Kind of like Pete does.
Yeah. So for what we're gonna do since neither of us teach math,
I did used to teach math.
True, you did. But yeah. I want to kind of recontextualize this into a bit more. We have 4 years more so of comics growing. I would say comics. Marvel already had like one of their best years on record in 2020 with everyone stuck at home with nothing to do, so everyone got back into reading comics. Yeah. I feel like coming out of pandemic, comics have felt even more prevalent in the zeitgeist because Infinity War is still somewhat on people's minds. We just had Thor come out, and people were stuck at home, so all they did was get back into their old hobbies. And so comics and Warhammer, both things I love, benefited a lot from that.
Yep, collecting. The amount of collectors now, as far as toys and collectibles, holy moly, it's really shot up.
Oh yeah, I imagine. Yeah. So we're going to kind of recontextualize this now with 4 years of growth since Mr. Yang's TED Talk. So we're going to be talking about some virtues and in a modern context of what we think of how we think the comics should be featured in classrooms and why we think they make good educational material. And also I have a few statistics at the back end here that also serve more so as like a general for comics. So the first one, which is probably the closest one to where my passions come from, is comics as a form of literature.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Absolutely. There's so many really good, rich stories. I absolutely agree with that. I'm gonna share my screen real quick.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. There we go.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
good.
That's the main Joker from Trump's. Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
Of course, it looks like another Joker, but you can't really do a Joker without looking like some Joker, right?
Yeah. It is a common theme. But yeah, so treating comics as a form of literature. I mean, I had mentioned, when I was in high school, we had a film as a literature class that was already considered, to be a form of academic standard. And even before that, you had, everyone's favorite, English and theater. So we've always kind of had this idea of tying visuals into the written language as a way of, not just developing a sense of the humanities, but also developing your senses of critical thinking, being able to break down a story. And I believe that the comics can absolutely still provide that sort of pincushion for critical thinking, that you can absolutely break down the narratives of a comic, especially some of those like really character heavy indie ones or early DC comics. You can really break down the narrative elements and the structure of that, and develop a real critical understanding of what the author's intent was. We mentioned this in our blog post that went up today, talking about the DC or full script style of writing the comic, and how it allows you to really create a character-rich story, because you're writing dialogue first before the action gets to page. And as far as breaking down literature style, that same kind of style, I feel like early DC or Alan Moore style of writing really lends itself well to that.
You mostly stick to the Marvel way, don't you? Or
I actually write. I mostly read Marvel comics, but I mostly write DC style full script.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is kind of funny. I
actually have positive things to say about both those.
Mm-hmm.
Both those ways. On the one hand, it takes a little bit of the guesswork out.
Yeah.
The other way, you have a little more freedom, but it's always trade-offs.
Yeah.
With everything.
Yeah, I did mention that also on our blog post that went live today, that there's pros and cons to each. Like I was saying, full scripting style, it allows you to take guesswork out. So, if you're as an artist and you're working on something, it gives you a lot more context to work with in creating the page. But also, it gives you some context for feedback. So, if you're just doing the summary style, there might be something that I'm visualizing that's important, but they might come across that way. So, when you offer to change something, you may not be on the same page. But if you see, the full script, you're like, well, I see what you're going for, but I don't think it's working out this way. What if we change this? Mm-hmm. And we'll be having another blog post on how to write Marvel style or page summary shortly. But and now both styles are now mostly referred to as full script and summary, as the editors at DC and Marvel kind of no longer care as much about the formatting, as long as you get it in. That's what they care about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you just need books in on time and try not to, write trash. And another benefit for comics as a form of literature. One of the reasons that literature in English is taught in schools is also to help the youths develop a lexicon of English, so they're able to better communicate and express themselves. And studies have constantly shown the best way to do that is to read and engage with new words. And I believe this is still true. I can't remember last time. On average, comics have the most rare words per. Rare words of any written format.
Really? Wow.
So if you break it down, the last time this was taken, on average, you end up finding 53 rare words per 1,000 words in a comic book. In an adult novel, it's 50 to 52, and then in the children's book, it's 30. So, and there are children-friendly comics that still meet that quota. So if you get your kids into comics early on, they're probably going to develop a deeper and more rich lexicon.
I absolutely agree with that, because whenever I was growing up, that was a thing that a lot of people would say. Of course, it wasn't a good thing to them. It was kind of a joke against me, but they would say, yeah, he uses those big words.
Yeah.
I wasn't using any real big words either. When somebody says that after you say something that's not really a big word, it's like, wow. But anyway, yeah, I would totally agree with that. Yeah, it definitely improves a person's vocabulary. I even think it improves, because of their vocabulary being improved. I believe it helps with their basic communication.
Yes.
And that's a huge deal, especially for somebody who's growing up, is to be able to express themselves fully. I believe it takes a lot of tension off of them to be able to actually say what they're feeling and thinking, and use language to do it, because a lot of times things happen to people and they don't really have a vocabulary to really, a deep vocabulary to go to be able to describe, how they're feeling. And it leads
Yeah.
to more frustration, especially, with stuff that happens with kids. But anyway, I'm getting way off track there. But anyway.
Oh, no, that's fine. But yeah, I had a English instructor that we also did debate, and he defines the art of argumentation as being the process of transplanting an idea from one mind to another. Yep. And the idea isn't not necessarily that they have to agree with it, but just that you are able to fully present the idea with context. And if you can't do that, if you find yourself lacking for words, or if you find that you're not able to express yourself as precisely as you might want, that's when frustration happens, and that's when communication starts to break down.
Yep.
So definitely doing everything you can to develop a stronger vocabulary can strengthen that skill set.
Well, it's difficult enough as you live and you grow and you experience new things. It's hard enough that you've never felt or never had some certain thing happen to you before, and it's it's something that you really need to get off your chest, and you know what I'm saying? It's hard enough to have a vocabulary for everything anyway, every new thing that happens to you. But then to have a very limited, vocabulary at best, just very limited, then that's even worse,
Yeah.
So really, I try to stress that whenever I was teaching, but anyway, I also taught English. But you wouldn't know it. You wouldn't know it now. But yeah, it's been years ago.
That's fair. But yeah, and then that word count that ties back into New Comics being a literary format. That richness of language tied in with the visual storytelling element. It forces the reader to not only think about the actual action on page, but the movements and choices the characters are making physically, as well as the language presented and what that means. So when they are developing a sense of critical thinking, it forces them to think about how characters are acting, how the story's progressing in multiple ways, and not just as text or as art on a page, but a combination of both. So it creates two different layers of thinking that need to be engaged to get a critical understanding of what's happening in a comic book.
Yep. It's also a very good way to propagandize and to and to get people, to brainwash people. It's a great way to do that.
Well, that's how comic books started. We got Captain America because a couple Jews in New York were tired of the United States not doing anything about World War II.
Yep.
We make a CC laugh there. All right. So this one, next bullet point, I'm going to present. Offer this one up to you to kind of lead, Quentin. But comics also as a form of art study. So traditionally, if you're taking an art class, you have studies of different forms of the painting or rendering, perhaps even physical media, and sometimes you end up getting the breakdowns of set dressing or of plays or anything like that. But I believe comics also form a new and exciting way to perform art study. So I'll kind of let you lead that and how you think as an artist comics present themselves as a way to do that.
I'm gonna sound like a total shill here. Because I'm doing comics and I like comics, but as an artist, I was not always a comic artist, and even my day job, I'm not a comic artist. I'm a graphic designer. I am going to say this, and I'm there's probably never going to be a truer statement come out of my mouth. I believe that if you are an artist and you are serious about your art, I believe that it is crucial for you to do comic art. I'm just going to say that the reason why I say that is because it forces you to draw things that you would never draw. It forces you to deal with things like anatomy of people, anatomy of dogs, cats, animals. It forces you to deal with geometry. It forces you to deal with perspective, gestures. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. I could just sit here. It will make you put variety into your ability. And as an artist, I mean, it has helped me in everything, in every aspect of art that I have went for. It has really accentuated, is really pushed everything to that next level. Doing comics or comic art, it does. And I would suggest, if anybody is an artist, that you need to do, even if you're doodling, you know, doodle in some panels, doodle some different stuff. I love comics. I love what it's done for me, like drawing comics. Because in my job, I have to be able to, on a whim, I have to be able to draw all kinds of different things. Like I may be drawing a 18-wheeler 1 minute, I may be drawing a skidder the other minute, and then I may be having to do Mickey Mouse, and comics have really helped me to be able to do that. It's given me the variety, that I need. But I don't even remember what the question. I probably veered way off, but I don't remember what the question was.
You're good. We're talking about comics as an art study, so
oh yeah, and another thing too is because you're doing these things and these things are required in the panels or for you doing these comics, it makes you notice things a lot more. Like when you see a car or a truck, a lot of people just see the shallow visual truck or car. But an artist who is trying to see that, to draw it, is going to notice more intricate details about it. Is going to try to search it a little bit more, look a little bit harder, and makes you a little more observant, I'd say, as well. So Absolutely. Anyway,
yeah, and even if thinking that also in terms of studying like art history,
yes,
yeah,
yep.
There's we have not had 2,000 years of comics. Well, we have cave drawings, which are kind of the first form of translational art, and then with the I forgot, it's not hieroglyphics, but the form of Egyptian storytelling that was like that, where you had full narratives drawn out over the edge of the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Similar concept. There's a long history of consecutive storytelling through a mix of art and words.
It's almost like, though, you say that, but it is almost like kind of the spirit of comics was there. It just hadn't been realized yet, and put panel after panel after panel.
Yeah.
Backing up each other. But people were doing pictures that were telling a story.
Yeah.
They just weren't using consecutive panels, but that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and now there has been almost 100 years of comics. With several different ages and styles and variations, and you can also see the advent and rise of technology in art through that. But you end up getting a lot of similar images that you can compare and contrast the same way you would through art history, and also seeing artist intent and perspective, and how moments were captured through art or recreated through art. I mean, how many, if you're taking an art history class, how many like facades of historical buildings do you like end up like seeing every so often, where it's just a painting of like historical building, and then you break down their perspective and the mood the artist captured with that.
Yeah.
But then we look at not to toot our own horns, but you go to the Christmas edition of Wolf Hunter, and we have we see the city of London during the Blitz, which is something that has been recreated, but we do our own way of recreating that and capturing our own mood and perspective of that. We get the inside of St. Martin's on the Hills, and we end up creating a whole new thing where we did the facade of the BBC building after it was bombed, but it's still being worked on, and you can our subconscious is probably working on that in ways that we didn't expect, because that's the way art works usually, is that people tell us the meaning that they found afterwards, and we just nod and smile.
Yeah.
But
I totally was not going for that, but I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah. We got that comment on the BBC where we captured it, and I noticed this after it's brought up to me that you have the BBC building after it's been bombed in a heroic angle, and like almost like it's standing defiant, like you would after Superman's been beat up and punched down, but you end up getting that angle of him standing tall. It's from like 3/4 down below him, looking up at his chin.
Yeah,
and you see the sunrise in the background. And we had that same, and he did that same angle at the BBC building where
I didn't even think about that. It was one of those things that just kind of happened. It was one of those happy accidents. Yeah,
exactly. And all things, I was like, wow, you guys really did like make it like they've been bombed, but they're still doing their job. They're still reporting. Like, yep, that's what we meant to do.
Yep, the whole time.
Yep. But you end up presenting that same opportunity to break down art and think about it critically as you would with art history through comic books.
Yeah. And I just had to say, too, there are so many things, there's so many things when you do a panel that honestly, if you are you could go nuts doing a comic page if you didn't just kind of let things fly and just be creative, because there's so many rules to so many different things. Talking about that angle, what you said, that angle looking up, that's a power angle because you're looking up at it. Now if you're looking down on somebody, usually that's the opposite. Like they're you're looking down on them, so they don't look powerful anymore. They look like ants, So anyway, there's all these things to consider. There's the angle of the shot. There's the perspective, how hard do you want to go with it? There's the sight lines. And I mean, there's all these rules. And if you got into that and just thought of all those rules all the time, 100%, I think a lot of times you'd miss your message, but that's totally off topic as well. But I was just thinking about that, while doing comics. Sometimes you can't go by the book. You have to, when you're trying to convey a message, you have to kind of go with a feeling and what makes you feel, what is going to make people feel the way you want them to feel. Not necessarily what am I following the rule,
and that's something like and usually we can just kind of like go autopilot and work on what we're feeling or what we're visualizing, because our brain has already been exposed to those rules, so we've internalized them, where we have put them somewhere in the subconscious. And that's what it really allows a reader to, have a really critical engagement with it, is that if we're, not doing everything by the book, if they're able to see that, this was a general part of emotion and understand what each choice that we made subconsciously does, and they're able to dissect that as a reader, that's how I end up getting some really, deep interpretations of that's how I get deep interpretations of literature that authors didn't necessarily intend. I forgot the guy who wrote J.D. Salinger, the guy who wrote Catcher in the Rye. He hated that people were critically breaking down his book. But he's like, I did not intend this at all. I just wrote the story. And everyone is like, no, there's a lot here that we can unpack.
Yeah.
And so, comics absolutely offer that same sort of opportunity that, presents something that readers can unpack visually just by seeing, the choices that artists made unconsciously.
Yeah. And there's really just so many choices to make at any given moment, and sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. Sometimes things, you have this crazy idea, and sometimes it really does well, sometimes not so well.
Yeah.
But you try every time. But mainly, the main thing is you can't always follow the rules. Sometimes it's about
Yeah.
just conveying the feeling or the story that the writer was trying to get, and you as an artist trying to make it as impactful as possible.
Definitely. All right. Next one I have here is talking about nonfiction comics. And there's something here that I actually just recently found out about, which kind of blew my mind. But let me get that tab open back up again. But obviously, the first thing I think of a nonfiction comic is the ones that do historical stories or historical narratives. I was the comic that I had read for school when I got to college was Mouse, which everyone who goes through Full Sail reads Mouse. But it's stylized. The characters are recreated as cats and mice. But it's a nonfiction story about a son, learning about the Holocaust from his father who survived through it. And so it's a retelling of the both his story and his father's story, and the from the great tragedy of the 20th century. So capturing that survivor's experience through a comic, not only does it create another great position to engage just as a reader of literature, but also it captures a historical a story from a perspective that isn't is not common to find.
Yeah. What I find funny is watching these YouTube videos sometimes that they have a opportunity to have a motion media with using YouTube, but instead they're drawing the things out on the screen as they're talking, and people are watching that. People are watching that because it's cartoons and it's comics. It just does something. It just drives it home.
Yeah. It's that Drew Yang kind of Gene Yang. Mentioned that on his TED Talk from 4 years ago that he said the comics are permanent, and that the future, present, and past all exist at the same time on the page. So you're engaged in something visually, and it's something that you can stick and reflect on, back and forth. So for some people, that does resonate more than a traditional moving film or anything like that, where if you miss something, you might need to pause and go back. But instead, it's all laid out for you at the same time.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's there's a ton of other nonfiction stories like that are have been turned to comics. I can't remember the name of it now. But there's one that I enjoyed recently was the name of the character, but it was about the start of the jazz and blues movement in New Orleans, and they captured this story of one of the pioneers of that movement, and that was turned into a comic. It was on Comixology a while ago, and I found it and that seemed interesting, so I had it to my library, and it was a good read. But there's a lot of other stories and room for more stories to be told that way, where instead of turning into film or just doing it strictly as prose, it works best doing it as a permanent visual medium in a comic.
Yeah.
So for the same reason why there's value in kids reading the Diary of Anne Frank in high school and studying like the stories of historical figures, comics present that same sort of opportunity with perhaps a way to engage them deeper.
Yeah, I would definitely love to see more stuff like, like you were just saying. That would be so awesome to have. Can you imagine having a history book that actually has, like more of an illustrated kind of presence in there, telling the stories and stuff? How crucial that would be to somebody learning something, whereas they would normally just be, staring at the ceiling, you know. Wow, that would be great.
Yeah.
That's why they should be in the classroom, Mr. Tim.
Yes. And then also there's the skill development comics. I mean, one of the ones that's everyone who works in comics probably knows is Scott McCloud's books, where he does books on writing and illustrating, but done as a comic. And it's obviously valuable. But something that I just learned about, which kind of blows my mind, is the fact that there is now a whole subgenre of STEM, science, technology, engineering, math comics.
Really?
So it's just some things that I came across that are interesting. There is the Manga Guide to Relativity, which is breaking down Einstein's theory of relativity through a manga comic. The Cartoon Guide to Genetics. Awesome Astronomy to Jack. This whole,
some of these things you're mentioning, they better have it in a comic form, or else I may not get it.
Exactly. I might now get deeper into my understanding of relativity if there's a book that breaks it down through manga. Yeah. But for us that works great, but it kind of presents then the immediate use case that for kids that grew up nerdy that may not engage with a dry and stereotypical textbook, presenting that through a visual medium. They tried to do it with Schoolhouse Rock and Magic School Bus, and those are great for where they were, but presenting that in a more permanent format where the same value you get from having a textbook, and that you can flip back and forth as needed, and you can reference in the moment. That you can't necessarily do with a TV show or movie, but then the same, or perhaps even a greater level of engagement than you would get with a movie or TV show, having it presented visually as well.
Yeah, we need some comics about the fourth dimension. I've tried to watch stuff because I'm so interested in it, but I just don't understand it. They threw out all these terms and stuff and jargon, and I want to understand it, and they try to explain it, as best they're able, but I just can't, and I try, but I just can't, my eyes glaze over. I love stuff like that, though. I love to learn anything I can, about that kind of stuff. So interesting.
Yeah, that's 100%. And it's interesting that my day job is as a content writer, so I create the how-tos and the frequently asked questions and all that stuff that you find like on web posting, but and there's definitely like an audience for it. But me personally, when I do the same thing, like I'm just going to go to a YouTube video or something like that.
Yeah.
So I definitely think there's going to be some great value as that genre continues to grow, and if that were to be used in more so in schools, especially at
think it will. Well, what do you think? I mean,
I would think so, because like we were talking about earlier, mainstream recently. So I definitely think that there's people who are passionate about these subjects. I mean, I can't imagine being a person who's passionate about myth, but they're out there. And if they're wanting to share that passion through a comic, if they love both things, then there's definitely now a greater market opportunity for them to do that. There's less gatekeepers in the way of stopping them from doing that.
I think that's going to be key, is getting somebody in there who is, well, like us, passionate or at least not even passionate, but is familiar with comics enough to know
Yeah.
just how powerful they can be, you
Mhm.
know? And
Yeah.
I mean, for you to not think so anyway, you're crazy.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, just all like we were talking about earlier, all the stuff that was going on during World War II, all the people who were turned, their ideas were totally changed by all of the things going around in comics and
Mhm.
stuff. I mean, I'm sure there's people who probably dreamed of signing up, for the armed forces just from stuff that they saw in comics, and I know some even today, from like GI Joe and stuff like that when we were growing up, that they became soldiers and stuff.
Yeah.
And there again, that's comics and all that. It's a very powerful medium, and
Mhm.
yeah, it's somebody somewhere there. It's going to take somebody that has a real appreciation for it to really get it, implemented somewhere.
Yeah. Definitely. And if I was, teaching like elementary school math or science or whatever, and I had, the cartoon guide to genetics, that'd be very easy to slot that into the curriculum. Just like we're talking about genetics this month, and here's a way to do it through a comic book.
Well, me being an artist, whenever I was teaching, I used my dry erase board a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and I was constantly drawing on it,
Yeah.
explaining what I was doing and everything. I mean, just constantly drawing on it.
Yeah.
And whenever I started feeling like people were kind of, getting a little away,
Mm-hmm.
then I would do stuff like draw a little building while I was talking. I'd have a guy falling off of it and another guy pushing him, and then they'd
Mm-hmm.
kind of snap back, and
Yeah.
yeah. So
Definitely. Yeah.
I forgot all about that. I hadn't even thought about that in a long time. Yeah.
That's what we're here for. And the last kind of two general points I have listed here, and this is just kind of like interesting, food for thought, and consistently the studies show that like the best indicator for academic performance usually comes from how much does someone read on their own time. And obviously they're outliers, and that's not like a universal truth. There are people who like reading is absolutely not how they learn, but statistically that seems to be a majority of cases, at least for the way that our educational system is currently built. But recently, within I want to say the last 5 years, they did a study in school library usage, and schools that had a substantial library of comics or collection of comics in their school library saw an increase of the library usage by students up to 82%.
Wow.
So they're 80%
Yeah.
likely to have an increase. 80% more students went to school libraries that had a substantial collection of comics. And then in those same libraries, they found that because they had a substantial amount of comics drawing students in, they also saw an increased circulation of non-comics material by 30%. So it's kind of a law of averages. The more students you got into the library, they're also more likely to check out other non-comics material.
Right. Yeah.
So getting kids to read comics also statistically it's likely to get them to read more and different material. So in terms of getting them to develop a deep relationship with the English, developing those critical thinking skills or interest, at least in some of those subject matters, comics seem to be play a part in that.
Well, I also say, as far as reading, the good thing about getting somebody to read, as opposed to them getting everything from just the medium of television or YouTube, is that when you read, stories are so much more detailed and so much. I
Yeah.
mean, everything. TV is really just like a. I mean, you can never put the amount or the depth of something in a
Hmm.
TV show. It's always the filtered, abridged version of whatever it's coming from,
Yeah.
And if you can get somebody to, read above, getting what they get from just, television and stuff like that, then
Mhm.
they could really get in deep into some stuff. And if comics, can help them do that,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, and there are yeah, there is there is challenging television. There's television that can be substantial, that can
Yeah.
present a certain way that challenges you. But I find the same thing where especially the American television media. I mean, I watch all the Disney Plus shows. I'm a nerd. Of course, I'm going to, but it does not provide the same richness of depth as prose or a written comic does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sometimes if you can get stories that do challenge you in other ways, and force you to think about what is happening. First couple seasons of The Expanse definitely felt like that for me, but if a story is written well, you're going to be doing that the entire way throughout, as opposed to
Yeah.
with a lot of television now, it just feels like you sit down and you're fed everything. You're not engaging with it.
Right. Yeah. I agree with that. Absolutely.
All right. Well, that's been all the bullet points that I have. Quentin, do you have any additional thoughts? Any nuggets that you've thought up while we've been talking about this?
Not really. I totally agree that art should take more precedence in school. There's a lot of people who they don't really, give much much clout to art.
Hmm.
They consider it to be more playing, but
Yeah.
we both, you and I, and probably a lot of the people who are watching this have an appreciation for art, know what the power of it is,
Mhm.
and not just the doing of it, but the seeing of it, and the partaking of it in any form is crucial. And it's I hate that, people look at it as just playtime or
Mhm.
play-in or whatever. I
Yeah.
wish, that schools and other things could take it more serious. I know when I was in school, I was a budding artist, and I was trying anything I could to improve my craft. And this is during a time when there was no YouTube. Back in my day, you had if you wanted to do something, you had to find somebody who was doing it, and you
Mhm.
had to, for no pay, you had to go up under them and learn it. And I'm talking about anything,
Yeah.
especially art. And if you could find somebody in your area that was good, I mean, good luck getting them to show you how to do stuff.
Oh yeah.
But and I went to, because we had some stuff going on at our school. I'd asked them, when I'd heard, we were getting some sort of art classes or something. When I went and inquired about it, it was like scheduled for 3 years after I was graduating. So I mean, it was like, so I never was able to be formally trained. I pretty
Yeah.
much just had to, do whatever I could. You got to be your own advocate about stuff like that. I mean, you have to, if you're going to be an artist, you're going to have to be an artist, and you're going to have to do the work. I mean, you
Mhm.
can't rely on other people or any of that stuff. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's what I have to say about it. Art is crucial. It's needed. It's needed in schools. I think schools should take a harder line, to try to implement it more.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that just because I'm an artist. I'm saying that as a human being,
Yeah.
a human being.
The line always that lives in my head rent free forever from Dead Poet Society. And talking to his science, math, these are important things that they help us live. but poetry, prose, and art, those give us a reason to live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I was thinking about this just today, and this has nothing to, I don't, maybe I can work it around to where it has something to do with what we're talking about. But I was thinking today, you go to school, and let's say, now look, everybody wants your doctor or your nurse to have a degree. You want them to have the doctorate. But, I was thinking, what is when it comes to artists, somebody can have a Bachelor of Arts degree or whatever, but honestly, if they say they've got a Bachelor of Arts, and then they show you their art and it's like a third grader, you know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
I was just thinking about that, how people go to school and for somebody else to bestow upon them after they've spent a lot of money and a lot of time, they wait for them to bestow upon them some sort of degree or piece of paper that says, okay, you're officially this, you're officially a doctor, or you're officially, and hey, like, again, I'm not knocking that. I want my doctor to have a good degree and have all those years of schooling. But when it comes to other stuff, how do you quantify stuff like art and stuff like music? It's really about the person getting out there and getting his own doctorate and doing it,
Yeah. And it's
a lot of personal work.
Yeah, it's a lot of personal work, and having the schooling in place there to help them start that
Get
engagement
you started,
early.
but you're gonna have to do it.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to do it. It's good to learn techniques and stuff. Techniques are great, but you know what? It's about doing it too.
Yeah.
And
that's the reason why I liked my program, and I think it's something, if you're going through a portfolio or if you're going through a PhD, you have to present like a PhD defense. You have to create a theory and then sit there as they poke questions and I critique it and then present a reasonable response to those critiques. And you're not supposed to be perfect. You're supposed to they are going to poke holes in it, and you're supposed to be able to present thinking about that, this is how I'll proceed with that in the future, how this is how I'll investigate that that theory, counter theory. With my program, you had to do kind of like a portfolio defense where we had to create certain written elements and then have them be critiqued, offer our response to them, and then create revisions and edits to that to match a critiqued a well critiqued and well reviewed process to creating a final form of art. And I don't know if all schools do that, but I think for a lot of art programs, something like that would also be very beneficial. Is to have art is subjective, everyone has different tastes, but there are certain rules and things that you learn them first, so that way then you learn when you can break them.
exactly.
And so having that same sort of thing where if someone tells you, well, I like this, but I think this is where you can improve on, and having that same sort of art defense or defense of your art would be really beneficial in terms of just so when you did get that degree in art, is well, I went through, I got beat up, and then I was able to change and grow through that.
Yeah, that's what I always tell my kids, and that's how I cook too. I always go by however the ingredients say to do it first before I become a scientist and start experimenting with making these cookies, or whatever it is.
Experimenting with baking, as usually always things get really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's I prefer doing pan cooking, because then it's just kind of freeform jazz. You just kind of throw things on there until it smells good.
Yeah. Yeah, just season it down until it's right.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've been at Silverline That Silverline Show on a Tuesday. This has been Why Comics Belong in the Classroom. Hopefully we have provided some interesting points for you to think of and how you can use comics as educational material. But our time has been reduced per orders from upstairs, so we're going to be cutting it off shortly here. I'm going to throw our banner on there. We do have a Kickstarter that's currently live. I don't think we do have play our trailer for a Kickstarter, and then we'll do our sign off.
All right, and also we're trying to get as much stretch goals done as possible. This is a stretch goal right here. This is going to be digital coloring pages. Let me just show off another one right here. Can you see that?
Ooh,
here's one for Teen Beetle, and then we have a couple more. Let me see if it's here. Dr. Mantis. There he is. Dr. Mantis. It's going to be a coloring page right there. That's what I'm doing right now is coloring pages for, let me find the other one though. Is this it? Yeah, I think this is it. Yeah. So this is all along with the already, stellar value that is coming in the Kickstarter. Go on over and check it out. Look at it. I think you'll enjoy it. I think you'll like it. It's a good buy.
All right. Now, a word from our sponsors.
Hi, and welcome to our Kickstarter. I am Roland Mann, and I run Silverline Comics, and this is our 19th Kickstarter. Yes, 19! We have successfully funded and fulfilled 17. Why not 18, you ask? Because we're still in the middle of shipping those books. So it'll make it. We're just now in July. So it's going to be on time. But I'm here to tell you about the next one. This time we've got 3 comics in one Kickstarter. But I'm going to shut up yakking, and I'm going to let me tell you about Trumps. Take it away, Roland. Hi. Let me tell you about Trumps. Trumps is a superhero sci-fi story set on the deck. Yes, it's about playing cards. There are 4 kingdoms at war. You might guess, hearts, spades, diamonds, and clubs. Yes, they're at war. The one who wins, the one who has the most power, can declare themselves Trump. We don't know who that's going to be. You don't know who that's going to be yet because you got to back the Kickstarter to find out who's going to win. Which kingdom will be declared Trump's. This is number 3 in a 4-issue miniseries, and I'm happy to tell you 4 is so close to being done. We'll be kickstarting it very soon.
Hi, this is John Crowther. I am the writer and co-creator, along with artist Del Barris of the Teen Beetle series, and I am excited to announce that we are coming back to Kickstarter with Silverline. And once again, we are seeing Teen Beetle in his battle with Dr. Mantis, as Dr. Mantis is trying his hardest to seize the formula for vitamin 2X. And as you know, that is how Teen Beetle gets his powers. So join us. I invite you to join us. Pick up this second exciting issue and get ready for the third one.
Switchblade is the story of Scott Nathans. Set in New Orleans, Scott is just a small-time boxer hanging out trying to make day-to-day. But he gets fed up with the justice system when a couple of killers are let loose by the justice system because the policeman forgot to read them their Miranda rights. And everyone knows that they killed this little girl and did nasty, despicable things to him. So Scott decides to take justice into his own hands, and he becomes a Switchblade. It's a 3-issue miniseries, and it's set in the world of cat and mouse, so hope you come along.
Don't those sound exciting? Yes, the answer is yes. The answer is yes, they do sound exciting. And you want them. You know you do. You know you want to pledge. You know you want to push that little button that says pledge. So that's what we need you to do. We need you to go pick out a tier, probably the extravaganza that has all 3 of them so that you can get all 3 books. Pick out that tier, pledge, and then tell all of your friends. But look, I know this is tough times. If you can't pledge, do us a favor, share it. Share it with people and say, hey, these are cool people. They make comic books. They ship comic books. You're going to like them. Go support them. Thank you. And remember to make mine Silverline.
All right, that has been our obligatory advertisement. So we're going to be getting ready to sign off here. Quentin, where can people find you? What you're currently up to? All the things.
Right now, I'm doing stuff for the Kickstarter. I'm working on Night Rise and lots of other stuff. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Deviant Art, all under Quentin Bedwell or QB1 Kenobi or Kenobi. And that's pretty much it.
Perfect.
What about you, Mr. Tim?
They can find me on all the social medias at TimTKWriter. It's Instagram, Twitch, Twitter. My Twitter is mostly just silly takes. But that's what I'm doing. Currently just doing web content for comics and working on the history edition for Wolf Hunter. So if you backed that Kickstarter, that book is still happening. It's been very busy, and there's a lot of history that I want to pack into that. Yeah, so that's what I've been up to. And they can find us here again next week at 8 p.m. Pacific time, and you can find our teams here, same channel, but Wednesday and Sunday for Wednesday Wham and Silver Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern time on those days. Next week, I believe we are talking about how to start reading comics.
Ooh,
yeah. So, as a reader, do you collect them all? Do you jump straight in? What's the best way to do that?
we ought to see if we can get somebody like a special guest that doesn't read comics.
Yeah.
And ask them what their problem is. Like, what is your issue with reading comics?
Yes. Yeah.
What would make it easier for you to read comics? Who knows?
That'd be great. Yeah, we should. I'll see about that. I don't know.
It could be my wife.
Perfect.
Yeah. We've already got our guest.
There you go. All right. We'll be next week with that. So until that, and if you came in on the later end of this video and want to see everything else beforehand, remember that this does go up as a VOD on YouTube and Twitch right after we finish. So until next time, remember to
make mine Silverline.
And yeah, that's what we got for you.
Awesome. Don't forget, everybody, back to Kickstarter.
Hi, my name is Paul Kupperberg. Make mine Silverline.